that we have learned about the computer, about this electronic device that have hardware and software components that can process and take input and give you some kind of output, and every now and then store things, and can also communicate, we can also establish that once an electronic device can have all of these things, or rather has all of these things, it can then be considered as a computer. Right? For example, a computer can be very small. Right? Let's say, for example, we have this thing called the smartphone. A smartphone actually is much more rectangular than that. It's less squarish than this, and much more rectangular than that. So you might or might not know what a smartphone is. Hopefully you do know. For example, an iPhone is a smartphone. Blackberries, especially the recent models, are smartphones. Then we have lots of different other models like Samsung Galaxy. All of these Galaxy series are technically smartphones. And I call this a computer. Why? Because it can do all of these things. Right? For example, when you want to buy a smartphone, usually what do you ask? Right? For example, some people might just go with popularity. Really, it's a good smartphone. I want to buy it too. Or rather, you can take into consideration what is inside the smartphone and what it can do. Now, this gives you great value then, meaning to say that you know when you're paying a higher price for a phone, what are you really paying for, right? Are you paying for the higher megapixels in camera? Are you paying for better power, meaning a faster phone? But how do you know it's a faster phone? Then you have to have a look at the hardware. And when you have a look at the hardware, you will realize that the smartphone has something similar to other computers, meaning to say that you can input and output things from your smartphone, usually in the form of a touch screen, which is an input device or input mechanism, as well as output mechanism. Right? Then once you say something to the smartphone, let's say you click an icon, right? It will be processed and you will get some kind of output. Let's say, for example, your application opens and now you can play it, right? Or you can download and store it inside your, nowadays a lot of smartphones use SD cards, right? Inside your SD card, and whenever you want to play it, you just click on the icon, right? And then your CPU, or rather your system software, if you're using, let's say for example, an Android device, your system software will be Android Gingerbread or Jelly Bean or Kit Kat, the latest one supposed to be, right? Or if you're using an iPhone, it will be iOS 4 or 5 or something, right? This is your system software which will actually, okay, this guy, which will actually say, okay, this guy or this girl has just clicked on an icon, touched on an icon. Now we have loaded so that he or she can enjoy it, play around with it. Enjoy doesn't mean you eat your smartphone, not really. Anyway, my point is, a smartphone is a computer, and a computer can be very small, like a smartphone, and surprise, it can also be very, very big, because since the computer can communicate, now it also makes sense if we can have some of these heavy tasks done by certain computers, and then we just get some information or software on our computer, right? So there are big computers that can do a lot of these things, a lot of these central things like process and store things. So in essence, a computer can be very small, it can be okay comfortable size, or rather we call these computers for individuals, right? Which are computers which are designed to be used by one user at a time. You don't really have several users using it. I mean, if you share your smartphone and have several people looking at your WhatsApp while you're typing, for example, I won't charge. Do you do that? You do? Nice weather. Anyway, and then we have computers for organizations. Yeah, you can imagine these are very big computers, or at the very least, they are maybe 2 feet tall, right? Maybe even larger, maybe even as large as a room, right? So computers for organization takes advantage of communication and does this, and then sends the data through communication to other small computers or other computers for organization, right? Or other big computers, right? So again, with communication, we can now have computers for organization that does a lot of the heavy lifting and then distribute the data to other smaller computers, maybe even other large computers. So let's explore these two things: computers for individual and computers for organization. And hopefully you remember this, and the same thing actually applies to your smartphone. And whenever you want to buy your smartphone, please do have a look at what is actually available for you. For example, certain smartphones say you have a fixed storage of 16 gigs, you cannot expand. Some smartphones will say you can expand, right, by using an SD card. Right? Some smartphones might have a certain CPU. Let's say, I heard, if I'm not mistaken, the Samsung Galaxy 5 will have a 2-point-something gigahertz processor, and it's a quad core. It's a very fast processor, right? So when you're paying more for your devices, please know why. And we'll explore computers for individual and computers for organization.